This film is based on a true story. In the opening shots we see a girl named Tami awakening on a yacht after a storm. There was water everywhere. Tami desperately calls for her boyfriend Richard and tries to get out of the cabin, but in vain. The water inside is growing stronger with every minute. Finally, Tami managed to get outside. She found herself on the broken yacht in the middle of the ocean. It was a long way to land, just a vast expanse of ocean all around. Realizing the horror of the situation, Tami screamed. The events then take us back 5 months to Tahiti, in the year 1983. Tami is traveling around the world and decided to stop here for a while. The girl does not have a specific destination, she wants to see all the places. To make money, Tami cleans yachts. She met a girl named Deb and told her she was born in San Diego. But Tami is not planning to go back home yet. Among other things, the girl is a surfer. She loves taming the elements, feeling absolute freedom in these moments. One day a handsome guy named Richard moored to the shore, who immediately became interested in Tami. The next day they met again. Richard offered Tami to have dinner tonight, and she gladly agreed. Later they met on Richard's yacht. He cooked dinner and said that he built this boat himself. He traveled alone for a long time. Tami wondered what it would be like to be left alone for long months. Richard replied that it is dangerous and scary. Sometimes he even had hallucinations due to isolation and lack of communication with people. But according to Richard, this is exactly what life is worth living for. Traveling alone, he felt reborn. Tami considers this experience truly exciting. Soon the young people went out in the ocean on a yacht. They really had a good time. The events then bring us back to the present. Tami continues to desperately call for Richard, but he is nowhere to be found. After that, Tami tried to contact the Coast Guard, but all she hears is static. Tami realizes that she is stuck all alone in the middle of the ocean. She sobs with helplessness, not knowing what to do next. Tami remembers the past again. That day she and Richard came to a beautiful mountain river. Tami loves extreme sports, so despite Richard's warnings, she was going to swim. Richard had never met such brave girls as Tami before, and he likes it. Since then, the young people have not parted. They understood that they are more than just friends. Perhaps their meeting is fate. In the present, Tami sees a lifeboat through binoculars. This gave her hope. She tried to start the yacht, but ended up getting caught on the sail and fell into the water. The yacht started to drift away, so Tami had no choice but to swim towards it. The woman was exhausted, but she did it against all odds. After patching up the yacht, Tami found a pump and began pumping water out of the cabin, then tried to set the sail again. It was not easy, but eventually Tami succeeded. Memories brought Tami back in time again. That day Richard gave her a special gift. It was a beautiful dress. Tami was delighted. In the present, she once again looks at the lifeboat through binoculars, hoping that Richard is there. This gives Tami the determination to act. She swims the broken yacht to the lifeboat and descends into the water, reaching her beloved. Richard was injured, but fortunately the worst did not happen. Together with her beloved, Tami swam back to the yacht and pulled him up. With tears in her eyes she soothes Richard, promising that everything will be fine. Tami, however, does not completely believe her own words. Some time ago, Richard and Tami were strolling through the local market, talking about various topics. Richard gave his beloved a flower, symbolizing immortality. Later they dined in a restaurant. Richard told that he had built his yacht 7 years ago. Tami in turn told about her family. She was raised by her father's parents, because her mother worked as a flight attendant and was constantly traveling. After finishing school, Tami ran away from home and traveled around the world for the next 5 years. It was a truly wonderful evening. Richard and Tami danced, not wanting to part ever. At some point Richard proposed to his beloved to embark on a round-the-world trip. In the present, Tami does everything she can to alleviate Richard's suffering. He urgently needs medical help, but Tami has to rely solely on herself. She's just happy that her beloved is saved. In the past, the young people are preparing for the upcoming journey. They want to visit Japan and many other places. Suddenly Richard heard familiar voices. Peter and Christine Crompton invited the couple for coffee because Peter wanted to discuss something. The spouses were planning to go to London, so they needed someone to deliver their yacht to California, to San Diego. The couple offered a reward of $10,000 and returned business class tickets. Even though this was against their plans, Richard gladly agreed. 2 days have passed in the ocean. Since Richard is injured, Tami herself has to deal with all the problems. She is determined to do whatever it takes to save herself and Richard. According to calculations, they have drifted too far north. Much further than they assumed. There are no shipping routes or airways here, and the rescuers will start looking for them not soon, because everyone thinks that the couple went on a trip. This made Tami think that they are doomed. Nobody knows where they are. In the past, Richard noticed that Tami was feeling down. She confessed that she didn't want to be just an accompanying person in his adventures. Tami wasn't ready to return home yet, as she had entirely different plans. Richard told Tami that he would not go anywhere without her. He had searched for his love around the world and now would not let her go. Tami felt warm at heart after hearing these words. In the present, they are trying to orient themselves and figure out what to do next. At this rate, they would be sailing to San Diego for many months. Tami suggests heading for Hawaii. Richard thinks it's a bad idea, as they would have to make a detour of 500 miles, but Tami says it's their only way out. As she planned, she set a course for Hawaii. A long and dangerous journey is ahead of them. In the past, Richard and Tami met Peter and Christine. The woman shared that they were rushing to London because her 94-year-old father was ill. Therefore, Richard would greatly help them if he agreed to deliver their yacht to California. The yacht turned out to be luxurious. When the couple went to the hotel for a drink, Richard convinced Tami to agree to this adventure. With $10,000, they could travel for the next whole year. Eventually, Tami gave in and agreed. The next day, Tami wrote a letter to her mother, informing her that she would be home in a month. The couple soon set off. Tami managed to save some food and fresh water. Everything else was at the bottom of the ocean. Obviously, these supplies won't be enough. Tami recalls how their journey was just beginning. They admired the sunset and discussed various topics, feeling absolutely happy with each other. It's been 5 days in the ocean. Tami did the calculations and found out that the deviation from their course was 60 miles. It's almost 2,000 miles to Hawaii. Tami is slowly starting to lose her mind. She is convinced that they are doomed and does not want to hear any more encouraging words from Richard. The sail caught, and Tami had to dive into the water. The sail was slowing them down greatly, so she had to solve this problem. On the second attempt, she succeeded. It's been 10 days in the ocean. Tami isn't feeling well, but Richard's condition is even worse. Tami takes care of him, fearing to lose him. Soon they were almost out of fresh water. The food supply won't even last a week. Richard suggests fishing. It goes against Tami's principles because she is a vegetarian, but there is no other choice. Tami dived into the ocean, but the fishing turned out to be unsuccessful. Then Richard started to cheer his beloved, saying that she is strong and will cope with this. However, it turned out to be much more difficult than Tami thought. She failed again. Soon it started raining. It seemed like salvation in this situation and allowed them to replenish their fresh water supply. It's been 18 days in the ocean. Tami managed to find booze in the half-sunken yacht. In the current desperate situation, it was a small joy. So day after day passes. The yacht slowly moves forward. Richard apologized to Tami for getting her into all this. The girl couldn't hold back her tears. She wouldn't trade these memories for anything. In the past, sometime before the storm, Richard told the beloved about his mother, who voluntarily left life many years ago. But he still occasionally hears her voice. That same evening, Richard confessed his love to Tami and proposed to her. Tami is exactly the girl with whom he wants to spend the rest of his life. Of course, Tami agreed. She loves Richard very much too. 29 days have passed in the ocean. Tami woke up at night to strange noises. A huge ship was passing by them. Tami begins to give signals, but it goes unnoticed. Tami is hysterical, suspecting that she has started to hallucinate. Maybe the ship wasn't real. Tami realizes that there is no escape for them. Now Richard doesn't believe in a good outcome either. However, as long as they are alive, there is a little hope. Richard is not getting better. Tami can no longer stand it, feeling her powerlessness. She persuades Richard to eat, but he can barely do so. There are 700 miles left to Hawaii. Most of the journey is behind. Tami remembers the day the storm began. Richard initially thought there was no reason to worry, but the radio reported that the hurricane front was intensifying. According to Richard's calculations, the storm will calm down before it reaches them. Tami suggested changing the course. Richard agreed with her, because the hurricane is close. With each minute the weather is getting worse and worse. Richard and Tami decided to make sure the sail was securely fastened. 33 days have passed in the ocean. Both Tami and Richard are exhausted. They constantly talk to each other so as not to fall asleep. The weather is getting worse again. The next day, Tami decided to prepare for this. Also, the girl noticed that Richard's fever has worsened. In the past, on that fateful night, Tami and Richard fought the elements. The storm caught up with them after all. It was clear that things were very bad. In the present, Tami made a shelter for them. She told the beloved about her childhood. The father often disappeared from her life, and that made Tami sad. When she turned 10, the grandmother forbade her father to come. Because of this, he used to make scandals. At such moments, Tami imagined that she was somewhere far away. Now she also wants to pretend that all this is not happening to her. On the night of the storm, Tami tried to contact the Coast Guard to understand what course they should take. However, the storm was only gathering momentum. The yacht swayed from side to side. When a massive wave started to approach them, Richard told Tami to go into the hold. As soon as Tami went in, the wave overtook the yacht. Richard fell and lost consciousness. In the present, he woke up Tami. She said that she would have to let him go. Tami loves Richard very much, but she also understands that he is not real. In fact, Richard perished the night of the storm. All this time Tami was talking to him in order not to lose her sanity. Despite her exhaustion, Tami continues her journey. Gradually she finally comes to realize that all this time she was talking to herself. After the storm, she never saw Richard. From now on, she will have to go through this alone. Tami managed to catch a fish after all. Now she has food, which means not all is lost. She spent 41 days in the ocean. A bird landed on the yacht, so the shore is most likely close. Looking through binoculars, Tami indeed saw land ahead. She can't believe she is saved. Tami launched a flare, and soon she was noticed. Just in case, Tami launched another signal flare. A ship was approaching her. The ship's crew lowered food and water to Tami and towed her yacht to shore. Some time passed. Tami went to Richard's yacht. Looking at their shared photographs, she can't hold back tears. Tami remembers the happiest moments that will forever stay in the past. The flower given by Richard, symbolizing immortality, had long since wilted. Tami released it into the ocean in memory of her beloved. Then the voiceover tells us about the real heroes of this story. At the time of the shipwreck, Richard was 33 years old. Tami spent 41 days in the ocean. She was only 24 years old. She survived thanks to Richard, whose voice she heard in her head. To this day, Tami continues to go out to sea.